Hey guys, welcome back to another great game of cEDH. I know this is a little different. I decided to try filming myself for some of these upcoming videos, so let's see how it goes. I just got back from Command Fest Orlando and man was it such a blast. I got a lot of games of Magic in and mostly recorded them, so that's a plus. For today's game, I know none of the commanders are exactly new, but the players are, well at least the cEDH. All of them were really interested in the format, and while they didn't have a deck, luckily I was able to bring a few extras. And overall, I played with a lot of new players this weekend, which was great. They all said they had a great experience, and it really opened their eyes, since their previous experiences with cEDH weren't the best. I know, we can all attest to some loser pub stomper coming in with something cEDH in a casual pod. But I wanted to thank everyone that I played with that weekend, and to my roommates who I met that weekend. It was a blast getting to know everyone. Also, have you heard the news? Your favorite cEDH YouTube channel has released some cool merch. And if you're interested in picking up some sweet new apparel, come check us out. Also, if you like what you see, consider joining our Patreon, as with your help, we can keep producing the videos you enjoy. And if you want to play with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community that loves to talk MTG or whatever else strikes our fancy. And we would love to meet new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. Starting us off is Troy, playing Tivit, Seller of Secrets. This is an Esper deck that carries a high density of win cons. Plus, having a one-card combo in Time Thief makes Tivit an ever-present threat, while functioning as a hard-to-interact with value engine in the meantime. Next up is Bolin on Korvold, Killer of Docksides. No longer a food chain Korvold, this is all about Dockside, and not just casting him, but sacrificing him and reanimating him, since Goblin is a dragon's favorite food. This is another fast turbo Nas list that can end games quickly, even without the Nas, by just casting Korvold and beating face. In the third spot is Hidden Planet X, piloting Evelyn the Covetous. This deck is fast, lean, and powerful. It actually has a turn 1 World Gorger combo win with Evelyn, which is insane. And while you also have Underworld Breach and Thassos as the backup win cons, this deck is always a threat. And bringing up the rear, we have Ryan on Slicer. This is a mono-red Voltron stax list that aims for a fast slicer to really start the pain. It uses a combination of stax pieces to slow your opponents down and an equipment package to give you some needed card advantage. As with Slicer, even if your opponents control him, you control the equipment, so that handy Sword of Fire and Ice will deal 4 damage and draw you 2 cards. With Slicer having the ability to attack 4 times each go-around, the game will definitely end quickly if no one has an answer. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Troy starts off the game with an Underground River. Oh, the Slicer's last. Nice.
Yeah. It's unfortunate for me.
Bolin plays a Command Tower and passes. Hidden plays a Morphic Pool untap and casts a Mox Diamond. He discards a Misty Rainforest and follows it up with a Chrome Mox, boldly imprinting a Baleful Mastery, and passing after that. Ryan has a Mountain and a turn 1 Jeweled Lotus. Maybe I shouldn't have exiled the Baleful Mastery. Yeah. Ryan then cracks his Lotus for his commander, Slicer, High Speed Antagonist. Ryan then casts a Mox Amber and moves to combat. He sees Hidden has the most mana available and sends the vehicle his way. But before he declares any blockers, Hidden actually casts a Dark Ritual and uses it and the rest of his mana to cast his commander, Evelyn.
Forgot that had flash.
It does have flash.
Oh, whoops.
The commander ETBs and exiles a top card of everyone's library, with a notable hit of a Villas from Bolin. I honestly thought I was golden when I blocked Slicer, but as it turns out that was not the case, as Ryan sacrifices his Mountain to Thunderclap Evelyn, and with First Strike, finish my commander off. Well, that was not good. I basically emptied my hand for that turn 1 Evelyn. And at least if I could have at least traded with the Slicer, it would have been something. But now I'm out of fuel and really out of this game, unfortunately. Ryan on his second main then taps his Mox for a Grafdigger's Cage. Troy plays a Pluted Delta. He cracks the Delta, and in response, Bolin entombs. He wasn't sure what he wants to grab, but settles on the Dockside, as apparently he has some way of getting around the Grafdiggers. Troy then finds a Tundra and casts a Mana Crypt, passing his turn after that. Bolin untaps, and in his upkeep, he pays 2 life to cast a Noxus Revival, targeting the dockside to put it on top of his library. Troy does have a response as he swan songs it to counter the spell, but locally, Bolin actually has a Veil of Summer, although this does mean he can't cast the dockside this turn. The dockside then goes on top and he draws it for turn, ending his turn with a tapped Overgrown Tomb. Hidden has a simple turn, just playing a City of Traders. And I am gonna pass.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, Grafdigger's Cage shuts off World Gorger Dragon.
Oh yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Just oh no, it was me.
Fair, I'm down to 2 cards,
I will
so...
play a mountain.
Ryan has a mountain as land and has the combat. He sends Slicer at Bolin for 3, converting the vehicle at end of combat. Troy untaps and gains Slicer. He plays and cracks a Bloodstained Mire to grab a scrub land. Remember the Mana Crypt trigger and he's safe for now. Troy then attempts to cast Tivit, and we quickly count out and find he's a mana short. He then casts a Lotus Petal to make up the difference. The Tivit then resolves, and Troy votes for 2 treasures, while the table gives him 3 clues.
I'm gonna go to combat. I heard that people like having Slicer thrown at them. You're gonna dockside, and that's gonna suck, so coming at you.
Okay, no blocks, I'll take 6.
Oh yeah, because he does have that dockside.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna suck. It's just mana for me.
So
Yeah, but they
a
give
little
you
bit of mana
a free Korvold and a draw, so...
and also I just made 5 artifacts.
Yeah, to make a lot of mana.
So I'm going to pass the turn.
Bolin starts off with a Rite of Flame for 2 red, and then casts a dockside. The Goblin resolves and makes 10 treasures. Bolin then heads to combat and sends Slicer at Troy, as he's clearly in the best position right now. Troy doesn't feel like trading away his Tivit and takes the hit.
Alright. I would like the Slicer player to convince me to not sacrifice Slicer.
It's very easy because it says on the card you cannot sacrifice Slicer.
Yeah.
I am convinced.
That's a wonderful.
Yeah, I am convinced.
Great job, Slicer player.
I know. That was great.
Dude, yeah, man. Conversationalist over there.
Then on Bolin's second main, he casts a Culling the Weak, sacking his dockside for 4 black mana, and with the help of 2 treasures, casts his commander Korvold. The dragon ETBs, and Bolin sacrifices a treasure, gaining the dragon a +1/+1 counter and a draw as well. He then sacks 2 more treasures for 2 more black and 2 more cards. He then uses his 2 floating black on a Dothy Voidwalker. Hidden does respond as he casts an Intuition. So at this moment, I wasn't sure if Bolin was going to be able to get there or not. I do know his main combo involves Dualcaster Mage and Twin Flame, and since he's already gone to combat, I was pretty sure he wasn't able to get there. So instead, I was looking to refuel on card advantage. So I ended up just grabbing 3 wheels, since that's probably the best thing I could do to refill my hand. Ryan ends up giving Hidden a Wheel of Fortune, and the Dothy resolves. Bolin sacks another treasure for a green and a draw. He then uses the floating mana on a crop rotation. He sacks his Overgrown Tomb and draws off Korvold before searching out an Ancient Tomb. Although he was thinking about grabbing another fetch for a draw off Korvold. He then takes 2 off the tomb to cast a Grim Monolith, following that up with a floating black on a Rain of Filth. He then sacrifices the tomb for a black and a draw, and finds something interesting off the top. He then casts a Lotus Petal and casts a Tainted Pact, using the rest of his floating mana. He starts exiling cards off the top and finds an Underworld Breach pretty early on. Although unfortunately for him, he doesn't have any way of removing the Grafdigger's Cage as he keeps going. Funnily enough, revealing a Haywire Might as his next card. He keeps going, trying to find something else until he reveals an Adnaz. He knows he's not at the highest life total, but wants to be risky as he stops there. He then sacks the command tower for a black and another draw. The petal is then cracked for another black and a draw. Then with the help of his monolith, he casts the Naz. He starts revealing cards and losing life. He gets all the way down to 7 and debates on whether or not to stop. He doesn't feel like he's revealed enough and decides to keep going, at least until he loses any more life. He ends up hitting a few lands and a peer into the abyss, taking him out of the game. We were curious if he had stopped before the pier if he could have won. So we go through his turn, making his plays and casting a bunch of things. And funnily enough, we end up finding he had enough to cast the pier, gain enough mana, and cast the Praetor's Grasp to gain thrasios from Tivit and actually win the game. But I guess that's why Adnos is always a risk. Hidden actually untaps and gains Slicer. He draws and fires off his Wheel of Fortune, with the only response being Troy firing off his swords on the Slicer. Hidden gains 3 and the table draws a fresh set of 7. Hidden then casts a Lotus Petal and casts a Talisman of Indulgence. 2 life then get him a Gitaxian Probe on Troy's hand, and oh boy did that deflate me. Troy wheeled into 2 tutors and a counterspell for backup. The wheel was also not kind to Ryan either, and Hidden knows he needs to attempt to win now or just lose. He plays a Scalding Tarn and sacrifices the city when it enters. He cracks the fetch for a Volcanic Island. Hidden then casts a Dragon Rage Channeler and casts a Warrior's Oath. He surveils a World Gorger to the bin and heads to his extra turn. So, on my extra turn, I will draw. I will die.
Yeah.
But let's see, so.
Hey, how's it going, Slicer?
You're probably gonna lose.
3.
You're gonna go like ritual,
5.
Slicer.
I don't even
double
have enough to
strike
cast
kill
my
you.
commander. So yeah, I am just straight up dead.
Okay.
So.
I mean, yeah,
Alright.
you went for
Yeah.
your
Yeah, go for
And
it.
I had a reanimation spell, but.
But you need to.
Yeah,
Grab
I've been
Tigger's Cage. You know what? I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So am I good to draw then?
Yes,
Okay,
you're good to
draw.
draw.
heavy lifter.
Ryan plays a mountain and casts a welding jar, ending his turn with an infiltration lens. Troy wins his crypt trigger and has the combat. Ryan can't block and Troy gets 2 more treasures and a clue from the Tivit trigger. Then on his second main, he casts a Whir of Invention, where X equals 2. Ryan does fire off a Pyroblast to try and stop it, but Troy has an offer he can't refuse, which stops the Pyro and lets Troy grab the Time Thief from his Whir. He then casts a Demonic Tutor for a Displacer Kitten, and then sacrifices some clues and a treasure to the Time Thief for an extra turn. Troy then moves to his extra turn and wins his crypt trigger. He has a Marsh Flats his land and then swings Tivit at Ryan. He gains 2 treasures and a clue and then casts his kitten, following that up with a Jeweled Lotus, triggering the cat to blink Tivit for 2 more treasures and a clue. He then activates Time Thief again for another turn. Troy then heads to his second extra turn and heads right to combat. He gains 3 more artifacts on the connect and now has enough treasures for another turn, and Ryan doesn't have anything else, giving Troy his first ever win in cEDH. And before we get on to the game review, I want to thank a very special Patreon supporter, John Schutt, for his support of the channel. Well, that was not how I expected that game to go, especially when Bolin started going off with those Korvold shenanigans. But I guess that's always the risk with an Adnos. He almost did get there, so I was happy about that. Unfortunately, since I basically blew all my load for that turn 1 Evelyn to block the Slicer, I was really out of that. And we ended up leaving Troy alone for just a little too long. And with the fresh set of 7, he just had it. But everyone had a blast, and for it being the first game of cEDH, I thought it went really well. Thank you to everyone who played, and as a reminder, I am a Monarch Community Ambassador, and coming back from this event, I can't wait for the next one. And Monarch is partnering with LotusCon for an epic cEDH tournament later this year. So if you're interested in finding out more, I'll leave the links down below. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.